Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton, and this is a guide on how to teach a new player how to play Weiss Schwarz. Obviously, there are already a lot of guides on how to actually play the game. This is not that. Other folks have made those guides. I will link them in the description. This is a video that covers something I don't think I've ever seen anyone else talk about: how to teach someone else how to play the game. The videos that teach the game are extremely valuable. They are necessary tools, but I think most of us would agree that the best way to learn Weiss is to play with another person who already knows how to play in person and with real cards. That being said, I haven't seen a lot of discussion on how to do that effectively, so as someone who spent a lot of years working in higher education and who has taught a lot of people how to play this game, I've learned a lot of lessons on how to teach Weiss, and I thought this might be a valuable tool for others who are trying to teach their friends how to play. I am not the expert on this topic. I don't think such a person exists, and different players obviously have different needs, so consider this more a general guide with some specific suggestions. So, first thing, let's get it out of the way. Weiss is not easy to teach. It's just not. There are two big obstacles to teaching this game, and we need to overcome them to help a new player understand how to play. First, Weiss barely has keywords. Bushiroad should have had way more keywords and better keywording when they printed this game initially a decade and a half ago, but we are too far down this path. We have been playing this game for a long time. The community has derived shorthands for what staple profiles look like, so we use that as opposed to a system of keywords. Some concepts have keywords, obviously, but a lot of the keywords that do exist are barely used. Way more staples have this paragraph of dense, tiny rules text that is intimidating to read and frustrating to parse, and that the player base has whittled down to a simple fake keyword that now needs to be explained. It's a lot. There's a lot going on. It can be intimidating for new players. So, one of the first things a player will need to know is simply how to read a card. We will talk about that a little later on. Second, Weiss just doesn't play like other card games. Clocking, damage, triggering, attacking, they're all unique in the way they work in this game as opposed to others. So someone coming from a different mainstream card game like Magic or Pokemon won't be able to easily translate their knowledge of trading card games directly into Weiss like they would if they were playing like Lorcana or Hololive. They'll understand things like card advantage and removal and like some like generic TCG concepts. The gameplay loop itself is very different and will take some getting used to. Those two factors make teaching the game much more difficult than other card games, so I thought this video could be useful. Weiss is a unique game. It benefits from being taught in a unique way. Even before we get to the actual teaching someone part, I highly recommend having a deck or two in your collection that are designated as your teaching decks. You don't necessarily have to build something specifically to teach people. You probably have something in your collection that is a good option for this in your collection already if you play a lot, but you should have something you can reach for easily when you're teaching someone else how to play. Hopefully something you can let them borrow for a while so that they can play it over and over again. It will make your life much easier, and crucially, it will help the new player learn the right lessons about the game. You're going to hear me say this refrain multiple times. It is really important that a new player learn the right lessons about this game. It's very easy for a new player to play their first game, and while they might learn the rules, they're already picking up bad habits and play patterns that are going to make their learning curve longer and more frustrating. It's very easy to misunderstand how to play this game well, so it's incumbent on us, the ones teaching the game, to try to help the new players learn the right lessons from their first forays into playing Weiss. So the teaching deck looks like this. 2 combos, one at level 1, one at level 3. Most decks are built like this. This is the easiest structure to explain and understand immediately, and you can build in complexity very easily off of this, so it's a good way to kind of get someone in with something very straightforward and then teach them more concepts by expanding what the deck is capable of doing. Both combos should be on 1k1 climaxes. You want to demonstrate common triggers, and you want to avoid the swingy nature of the 2-soul trigger, right? We don't want people to, just eat 4s and 5s randomly, as 2-soul triggers, sometimes enable. We want them to play a really normal feeling game. We also don't want to see standby. We'll get to standby in a bit. We don't want to see standby in these teaching decks. No more than 2 colors for level 1 and higher cards. Players do need to know how color fixing works, but if they're playing a deck that wants 3 colors, they will oftentimes start focusing on making sure they have all their colors. We want them to keep their focus on playing the game, not making sure they hit a color condition. A simple advantage engine. No standby, no neg soul, no fusion, or other uncommon mechanics. Most decks play a game that's based around gaining card advantage through effects and comboing. Obviously, there are lots of other ways to gain advantage, but learning how to play the game built on a combo and card advantage-based version of the game provides the framework that will help the player better understand how other decks create advantage when they encounter them and inevitably want to play them. The deck should have as many universal stable profiles as possible, things like Climax, Swap, Ricky, Early Play Heal, etc. This is for two reasons. One, the obvious one, the new player is going to play these cards a lot, so it's helpful for them to recognize them and play them early on so they know how to use them. The second is so that when a new player draws these cards into their hand, the cards have some kind of immediate utility. It's not a tech card that they don't see the use case for. Also, probably shove a couple more zeros in this than the average deck, just so the new player is less likely to get stuck. They at least have zeros to play. If they get zero for an extra turn, or if they just need something to fill the board, they have something they can play on the board. Finally, you want the deck to be powerful enough to win casual games, but you don't want to give them any extremely powerful cards. Carmen from PGH Weiss Schwarz wrote an excellent blog post a little while ago about how extremely powerful cards don't help new players learn the game well. I'll link that in the description. Extremely powerful cards are very good at teaching the wrong lessons on how to play, because new players who use them are going to lean on those cards to win games, as opposed to their own developing skill. Training wheels help you learn how to ride a bike. A big wheel just teaches you how to pedal. So we don't want to hand players these cards that are not going to help them get better at the game. My primary teaching deck is a Review Starlight 8 Pants list. It's the most vanilla thing you've ever seen, but it helps players learn the right things about card advantage and good card profiles. I don't love trial decks as teaching tools, if I'm being honest. Sometimes you'll come across someone who is like, I bought the trial deck and I really want to use it. It's like, okay, you should oblige them if you can. That IP is probably what got them in the door, and we want to keep them in the door. But TDs are full of bad filler cards. They teach the wrong lessons about board presence and brainstorming. They've got a bunch of vanilla 1s and 2s, and brainstormers are almost always draw brainstormers. If possible, you want to hand someone a pre-constructed deck that you made that is not a trial deck. Or at the very least, you want to help edit that trial deck, remove some of the really bad cards, and fill out play sets of combos. There are a couple of trial decks that work okay. I like the Spy Family trial deck, actually, because it has like a real combo at level 1 and level 3, and a bunch of profiles that are pretty playable. But even with a trial deck that doesn't suck, you want to at least replace the brainstorms and make sure that each combo has 4 copies. At a minimum, new players who insist on playing a trial deck need to have 2. They need play sets. That's important. So once your new player has a deck, you should play a similarly powered deck when you play against them for the first time. Don't beat them up with some standby build that they don't know the outs to. We want them to have fun, so they want to play more. So they're going to get curb stomped plenty when they go to locals. You need to be a safe person to play against and learn with. Now we're actually ready to play the game. About 10 minutes into this video. The first and most important thing a new player needs to know is how to win. It's so annoying how many people will get into a game with a new player and they'll play multiple turns, but they don't explain the game's win condition. Knowing how the game is won affects every decision you make. It helps the new player learn the right lessons about the value of damage. It immediately leads to players understanding how the clock and leveling up work. It forms a framework for how the game flows, and it allows players to start sculpting with future levels in mind from the first turn of the game. It allows them to play the game with that 30,000-foot view, understanding why they're doing what they're doing. When you sit down across from the person you're teaching for their first game, offer to play open hand. If they agree, this gives you more of an opportunity to guide them a bit. Even if they don't want to play open hand, however, make it clear that the object of this game is not to win, and that you want them to ask questions rather than withholding information from you to try to win. You shouldn't care about the result of this game, and you want to make sure they also don't care about the result of this game. The purpose of this first game is for them to understand how to play. Something you can do, and it depends on the person you're teaching, is show them their combos and explain how Climax combos work. You don't need to do this. This is something that will come up pretty naturally, especially if you gave them a good teaching deck that allows them to find their level 1 combo easily. But if you think it would help the person you're working with, by all means, show them how they work. Every player is different. Every player is going to have different needs. All right, so once you're ready to actually start playing, you should go first. That way the one attack rule only affects you, and you will get to demonstrate a turn. Both players will mulligan, and the mulligan is where the new player learns how to read a card's level. If they're playing open hand, you can tell them which cards to mulligan and why. If they're not, advise them to ditch any level 2s or 3s in their hand. Remind them that they're at 0. They won't be able to play these cards for a while. They will be able to get them back later. Make sure they understand that. Sometimes players who play other games will ask about decking out at around this time, so you can explain how the refresh works and how you're going to go through the deck multiple times. Because you're going first, as you're playing, explain everything that you do. Draw, clock, draw a 2, play a card, move to attack phase, attack, trigger to stock, do damage, encore step. One of this game's great strengths is how a turn flows in a very natural way. Demonstrating that flow can help a new player find the rhythm of play more quickly. On their turn, you will guide them through the same process, starting with clocking. Instruct them that it is wise to always clock when at level 0 or 1. Some players aren't going to understand the value of hand versus 1 point of damage. They're going to go, why do I want to damage myself? That sounds counterintuitive. You want to make sure they understand this good lesson, how cards and damage are valued. You don't need to go into a whole thing about what they're worth in the context of the game, but make sure they understand that taking 1 point of damage in order to exchange 1 card for 2 others is just good rate. It's a good thing to do, especially early in the game. They'll eventually learn the cases when clocking before level 2 might not be advantageous, but they don't have to learn that lesson in game 1. Right now, we want to make sure they understand that they want to clock. So we talked earlier about how this game is not necessarily intuitive in large part because the card text is super dense. So when new players are looking at their opening hand, they see a bunch of numbers and words that don't mean anything to them. So this reality leads us to 2 principles that we're going to follow during the first game we play with a new player. 1, be prepared to give instruction when you otherwise might consider guidance. Teaching someone how to play involves, at least at the beginning, telling them how to play in a lot of instances. And, number 2, teach new concepts as they come up, not all at once. You don't need to explain what a climax does just yet. That will come up very naturally. They're going to see a climax and wonder what it is. Answer that question when it comes up. There's a lot going on, so only explain the information that needs to be known in the moment. Answer questions they have when possible, but they don't need to know how every single thing in the game works. We want to keep them focused on what's happening in front of them. We want them to kind of follow the natural progression of the game when understanding how it works. All right, so all that being said, let's get back to talking about how a new player can read their cards. Level, cost, and power, really easy to explain. The difficult part is effect timing and cost. Don't worry about the differences between act, auto, and continuous right now. Eventually that question will show up. They'll ask what the difference is and you can talk about the timings, but for now, have them focus on what the card says for them to do. They're going to, on the first turn of the game, hold up a card and say, how does this work? Or they're going to go, I don't understand. They're going to say something that indicates they don't know what the card in front of them is supposed to do. This is where you can demonstrate how new players should read cards. By reading the text first and returning to the cost when it's mentioned. For example, when you read this card, you can say, when this card is placed on the stage from your hand, you may pay the cost. Then point back to the beginning of the text and say, this is the cost. Pay 1 stock, put 1 card from your hand into your waiting room. Then continue to read the rest of the card. If you do, search your deck for up to 1 music character, reveal it to your opponent, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. We're trying to demonstrate how the card works, so reading it in a way that clarifies this oddly framed information to the new player helps. This is also a great opportunity to explain how stock works. This is where you can explain how you gain stock by attacking and triggering. When they understand how stock works, it will intuit to them that they shouldn't play a card with an on-play stock effect right away. If they look at their hand and they just look really confused, tell them just look at your zeros for now. Set aside everything else, just look at your zeros and read the zeros one at a time, go through them and talk to them about how they all work. Be willing to give instructions. Say, I would play this card. I would hold on to this card for this reason. Things like that. Hopefully the deck you've given them has a high number of zeros so they have sufficient options. Discourage them from swinging in more than 2 lanes at first. It's very easy for a new player to be far too aggressive and run out of cards. Crucially, when we get to the damage dealing part of the turn, make sure they understand there are 2 different damage stages, doing damage to you and doing damage to your characters on board. The timing of that isn't super important right away, right? There's a ton going on. So do the effects in proper order so they see the pattern. But if they're reversing things too early or too late, or if they're, doing battle step stuff before they're doing damage stuff, don't worry about it too much. It kind of all happens at the same time. They'll pick that up later. The most important part is that they're doing the things correctly. Watch their triggers, watch their clock steps, make sure cards end up in the correct zones. There are a lot of moving parts. We want to make sure that they're proccing all of their effects appropriately. Climax cards will reveal themselves early, either as triggers or cancels, or hey, what's this sideways card in my hand doing? Explain that facet of a climax card to them. Say, there are 3 things a climax does. The first thing is whatever this is, right? If it's a trigger or if it's a cancel, or you can play it from your hand and it'll do this. We will cover the rest when we get there. Climaxes are easily the most unique mechanic in the game. We want to make sure they understand it, but just dumping a whole bunch of information on them right away, especially because there's already so much happening on turn 1, might not be the most conducive thing to them understanding how the card works. As I kind of hinted earlier, you have 2 options of teaching how climax combos work. You can either allow the game to take place naturally and let combos happen as they acquire the combo pieces, or as you go to level 1 first and you demonstrate how a combo works. Maybe you tell them when they play their Ricky or they hit a Brainstormer that they want the level 1 combo, kind of guide them into that mid-game. Or, as we said earlier, you can explain to them their combos before the game so they know to target them during play. That depends on how much info you want to drop on them when the game starts and what you think is going to be best for them. As with anything else in this guide, use your best judgment. That's probably like the big either or from my perspective. Neither of those ways of teaching are incorrect. It depends on the player that you're working with. After a couple of turns, they'll understand how damage works, attacking, triggering, as well as colors and levels. They're going to ask, what does this card do a lot? So be ready to answer them. One of the reasons you run a bunch of normal profiles and no niche tech in the list, right? So that they see Brainstormers and Rickies and Swaps and Runners, but they aren't going to misplay a Shuffleback or a Blinker that they don't know the use case for. Again, trying to focus on teaching the right lessons here. When a refresh point happens, just explain what happens. When the last card of my deck leaves my deck, everything stops. I immediately take my waiting room, I shuffle it, and then I put the top card of my deck into my clock. Clarifying the timing that refresh interrupts everything will help them understand how it works. I really like the phrase, everything stops, when describing refreshing or canceling, because it helps to communicate the immediacy of the effect, and it draws their attention to that concept, because it is very important. Finisher combos are pretty easy to explain. They understand how climax cards activate combos, so make sure they understand that finishers typically have a 2-soul base, and that they activate their timings correctly, either on attack or at the end of attack. They understand how climax cards activate combos because they've seen that already. So make sure they understand that finishers typically have a 2-soul base, and you want to make sure that the new player activates their timings correctly, either on attack or at the end of attack. And that is how a first game should go. Who wins does not matter, but because you're helping them learn how to play, and you should also be playing a deck with limited power, they very well might beat you. Don't be weird about it. Some additional notes. Backup is an ability that does not need to be used in the first game. If it comes up, it comes up. They might ask about it, hey, what is this card? What is this symbol kind of thing? But if they don't worry about it. Backups aren't used in most decks to win battles as much as they're used for memory or early play removal, and first-time players don't necessarily need to understand how anti-change works, right? Eventually, they'll need to know that, obviously, but that's something that will come up over the course of playing multiple games. It doesn't need to be, shoehorned into game 1. Your practice deck may or may not include events. Events are not difficult to explain and should eventually come up pretty naturally. Counter events, like neg stolen tap counters, might need some explanation. You should play something different against them when you play against them the second time. That way they can see how their stuff interacts with different archetypes. They can see new triggers and profiles. And when you think it makes sense, start showing them some funky stuff, standby, fusion, other kinds of effects, and they're starting to understand the game a little bit more broadly. Most likely they will ask, is this deck meta, or what's the best deck in the meta at some point? You can be honest. You can also honestly tell them that you can win games of Weiss with almost anything. I finished 4th at a 200-player regional with Dragon Maid, and I won a bicard with Harvey. I tell people all the time that if you're kind to a set, it will be kind to you. And if anything, playing with underpowered cards makes you a better player. It should be encouraged for new players. If they want to play a bad set, encourage them. to play the bad set. They're going to learn a lot more making bad cards work than they will best deck in the format on the board and not learning the crucial lessons on how to play the game effectively. Do not teach Pay 3 Encore in the first game. Seriously don't. It is a break glass in case of emergency type of effect, and it should be treated as such. At the very least, make sure they understand that it's a bad idea to use it in almost every circumstance. They will eventually figure out when they should use it, possibly by misusing it once they finally figure out what it is. But don't go out of your way to explain this concept right away, because it's very easy for new players to misuse it and end up out of resources. And then finally, don't be a jerk. Just don't be mean. Card games are supposed to be fun. Most people aren't playing to try to go to Worlds and win events and stuff. Your goal should be to help the new player be able to play independently, to find decks that they like, and enjoy playing the game at whatever level they want to play that. You being mean will inhibit that goal. Hopefully your locals is a friendly and inviting place where people actually want to come and play card games. So yeah, that is a certainly non-exhaustive guide on how to teach a new player how to play Weiss Schwarz. I love this game. This game has been really, really good to me. I have met a lot of wonderful people. I have deepened relationships with my friends because of this game. I've gotten to travel, see things, experience things that I otherwise would not have had the opportunity to because of this game. I want other people to be able to have those kinds of experiences, which is why I love teaching new people how to play. And that's why I made this video, because I want you to enjoy teaching other people how to play. Because if you watch this video, game probably matters to you too. And it is a joy having more people who want to play. That's all I got. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with another video. Until next time, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And have a good one.